Ladies and gentlemen, taking stage next, we have with us Francis Zhu. Francis is Director of Strategic Marketing at ZTE Corporation. He's currently responsible with expertise in overall business and network development strategy and has almost 20 years extensive experience in telecom ICT industry with hands-on working experience in areas of sales, business development, product marketing, solution consulting. He's familiar with markets in Asia Pacific, Southeast Asia, as well as Latin America. He's technically strong in wireless and value-added service solutions. Francis received his PhD in electrical engineering from National University of Singapore and Masters in Electrical Engineering from Beijing University of Posts and Telecom. He also received his MBA from the National University of Singapore. He's here today to speak to us about the future outlook of IoT. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Dr. Francis Zhu.
Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm Francis. I come from Singapore. So basically in ZTE, we have a small team based in Singapore and Kuala Lumpur, responsible for what we call strategic marketing for the whole Asia. And I'm part from that team. Thanks for the invitation from Mobitel. Today I wanted to take the opportunity here to share with you this topic, what we call the future outlook of IoT. Later you will find out some of the contents or the points I'm trying to talk about is similar to what you already heard from some of the previous speakers. It's easy to understand in such a way because for ZTE, we are completely compliant to the 3GPP standard. So many of the viewpoints actually is in line with what you heard from, for example, the GSMA speaker. And also from technology, product, and the solution point of view, we actually have, if not the same, at least very similar end-to-end solutions as our friend Huawei. So you will see some of the points actually we are actually sharing similar points as well. But however, if you're asking me what are the key differences for this session compared with the previous session, I would say for this session I will be trying to loop down a little bit from the overall picture, try to more stick to the scenario from the operator prospect to touch base on what are the key things both from the strategical level as well as the practical level, and from both the domain of the network as well as business operation. For these four different levels and the different domains, I will be trying to touch base on what are the key things we actually already saw from many other parts of the world of the operators. What are the key things actually the operators, for example, from Sri Lanka can take into consideration when you move into the next stage to develop your network as well as your business operation to be ready for the NB-IoT and other technology of IoT, and also even in the future to have a smooth evolution from today's 3G, 4G network to tomorrow's 5G network. So this is really where I come from, okay? So then I will still go back to a little bit the overall picture first. So for the previous 5 to, let's say, 8 years, IoT in general is actually a very hot topic in the telecom domain. What's the reason? The reason is because exactly as one of the speakers earlier mentioned, since the beginning of the LTE 4G network, actually the operators global-wide is actually starting to have a fundamental transformation from the service operator, from the service provider to provide communication service man-to-man to at least a connectivity provider to support people, to have the data connectivities, to support people on this, what we call the coming digital life. So this transformation has been there, and this transformation has been having fundamental impacts on every prospect of the operator, the traditional telcos. So not only on the business operation portion, actually we will touch base on that a bit later, but more starting from the impact on the network capabilities. So for that, actually you are not only need to modernize your wireless access network, let's say to build the 4G network and so on. Actually, you need to have a full master plan to even modernize almost like every segment of your network. So from wireless access to IP transmission to the core network, and also to introduce many new capabilities, for example, the cloud-based capabilities, as well as big data and the AI-based capabilities into your network. Only when you have all such things in place, actually you will have the freedom really to launch many new services, particularly the IoT-based services. Okay, this is really what are the important factors to take into consideration when you move into the IoT domain. And of course, another reason behind the scenario we see why so many operators is so keen to move into the IoT domain is particularly because the telecom industry as a whole actually has been having quite significant challenges for the last 5 to 10 years. I think many operators already have this same experience, and actually your voice revenue is dropping down very fast. Your data revenue, even though you put a lot of capex to modernize your mobile network, for example, your data revenue is not really increased at the same ratio as what you actually do in your investment. So if we look into this picture, you will see from this chart, actually is giving you the global-wide landscape about what different telecommunication business segment is doing. So we use, for example, in the middle, the gray bar is actually the global-wide, what we call all industry growth rate. Okay, this is what we normally use as a benchmark. And then if you look into the telecommunication, the traditional telecommunication services, you will see, for example, the mobile voice, the fixed voice, they are very much below the average. Meaning what? Meaning the traditional telecommunication business actually is doing much poorer than the average global-wide cross-industry performance. And then the fixed data, basically dominated by fixed broadband, is merely on par of the average growth rate. The only much better performing segment is actually the mobile broadband. But at the same time, all the operators already know how much new capex they have been putting into your network, for example, to build a brand new 4G network to support that growth of the mobile broadband. So that means for the operator, they already see if you stick to the traditional revenue resources as a telco business, then this business probably is very difficult to sustain for the next 10 to 20 years. And that's exactly why the IoT, or originally we call cellular M2M, becomes the most significant new growth area. And it is expected to be the next big buck of new resources where your next resources coming in. Here, there is some numbers. All the numbers are very huge. It's somehow debatable about how accurate these numbers are. But they are from consulting companies, independent consulting companies. So we are not going to debate about whether the numbers are accurate or not. But anyway, all the numbers are very huge. That's for sure. And then what I'm showing here is actually they're talking about different vertical industries. For example, smart city, public utilities, environment, education, home, healthcare, and so on and so forth. Previously, those vertical industries, they are already there. Every year, they actually have very big number of revenues already generating. But the only problem is actually they are not directly related to the telcos because it's not so much directly related to the telecommunication business in a sense. But the 4G LTE onwards, actually one of the biggest area actually opened to the traditional telco is actually all these industries, actually they have a need to use the IoT connectivities if the IoT connectivities is available and actually is better than the incumbent technologies they are using. So that's why eventually we are expecting a portion of these total revenue numbers will be eventually part of the telco's revenue resources. And for that, again, the number is very huge. We don't debate how accurate it can be. The number is expected to be what we call addressable mobile revenue by year 2020 is actually something like 375 billion global-wide. That's a huge number. But of course, this is so-called addressable. How much will be the actual, turned out to be an actual revenue for the telcos is still something we yet need to wait to see. Here is another, from another angle about the growth of the IoT as a whole. This is from the device point of view. So the total IoT shipment global-wide actually is expected to grow from about 900 million to more than 6.6 billion units global-wide. And that, again, is actually a seven-fold increase in 7 years' time, which is one of the biggest growing areas for the telco business actually can try to attach to. And based on the reasons and the backgrounds we talk about, here is showing one of the survey, for example, done by IDC is showing, this is back to 2015, it's showing actually about 60% of the operator global-wide, they say they are very actively pursuing IoT, and another 20% is actually saying they are closely following up on IoT. Meaning what? Meaning at least more than 80% is actually trying to pursue the IoT as one of their next focus areas. And from another angle, if we look into the value chain of the IoT industry, you will see roughly the percentage is always like this. So the pipeline is about 20%, device is about 20%, system integration is about 10%, and the application and the services is about 50%. That means what? That means if you take the traditional approach of the telecommunication industry, as per today we have, so basically the 20% of pipeline is directly related to the telcos today. It's because your network becomes the connectivities, right? At least one of the major part of the connectivities for IoT, whatever the IoT industry even look by themselves. So, and then for the device, actually it's not so much dominated by handphones. Handphones is traditionally what the telcos is actually having experience and dominating in that segment. But out of this 20%, maybe 5% or less than 5% will be handphone-based. The others actually will be more on industry-related, vertical industry-related devices based. So if you look into here, which means moving forward, in the best scenario, if we don't do a lot more things to try to grab more from the IoT domain, so for the telcos, maybe about 20% to 25% is the maximum actually you can try to acquire from the IoT domain, whatsoever the IoT domain start to grow in the future. That's exactly why the telcos, most of them, particularly the tier 1 telcos and those leading ones, they have been very actively trying to explore these areas other than the traditional telco network areas, for example, on the application and the services and the system integration and so on. So for that, naturally, in theory, there's 3 options for the telcos to choose. How do they position themselves, and how do they actually looking forward to evolve to the future? So, of course, the very basic and the simplest scenario is they stick to the network, and then they becomes the sort of the pipeline provider. So they provide the connectivities, and that's all. So for that, we are saying you may be taking about 20% in the total revenue as we talk about in the very long term in the IoT domain. And the second scenario, actually the telcos, they move one step forward. In addition to the network, which is a connectivity, at least they build up the platform. And this is only from the technical or network point of view. In parallel with that, they need to actually also change their business operation and even their mindset as well. For that, they will need to have changes more than the network and the platform. They also need to have, for example, a business unit which is really knowing the IoT domain very well and focusing the IoT domain. And for that, you still need to have a partnership, and then to complete your service delivery capabilities, then you become what we call a resource provider. So the IoT service provider, they use your resource as whatever they need. And then they don't try to build their own resources anymore, but they actually cover the application and the services and also dealing with the individual, for example, vertical industry. But after that, they use, if not all, at least the majority resources from your side. And for that, you can have, let's say, 40% or whatever percentage in the share of the total pie of this business. One more step further, of course, naturally, is actually the telcos try to become a service provider, a full-scale IoT service provider by themselves. And for that, we are saying you are not only need to have all the things before you have, but you need to have the capabilities to really package all the network resources and the business resources to make sure you can deal with the vertical industries to offer them IoT service directly. And for that, you need to make even a lot more changes from your current business operation model to be really a new model suitable for the IoT domain. And one of the key things that is actually moving along the second step and the third step. One of the key things is actually to create what we call the end-to-end ecosystem. One of the key areas for current telcos is to establish partnership. Because in each and every vertical industries, there is already some players over there. And the most likely, the natural partner for you is the system integrator already in that vertical industry. And then if you actually partner with, for example, the leading system integrator in any vertical industry, then it will be much easier, much faster, and much smooth for the traditional telco to move into the IoT domain. So this is very important. We see from many of the reference cases, the telcos need to get a partnership and try to create an ecosystem for in each individual vertical industry and across all the vertical industries addressable. And for that, actually, you can fully utilize your capabilities from your network and the platform, and actually to get the economy of scales. And that is the key to make sure you actually have a winning positioning in the IoT business domain. Okay, and then we already talked about a little bit like longer term, but then we try to put a very simplified version of where we can start from, which is what are the strategy we can start from. But before that, also, I wanted to put into your attention, this is in line with the technology development, particularly from the wireless access point of view. So today, actually, the up to almost like today, the traditional IoT or M2M industry is not something new. Actually, it has been there for a long time. The traditional M2M, actually, some of them is using the GSM, and the many traditional industries, they are still using GSM-based M2M or IoT solutions. And up to almost like now, actually, if you see into the IoT, I'm saying the mature commercial segment of the IoT domain is actually still mainly by the cellular technology and also some short-range wireless technologies, for example, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and so on. Earlier, I think one speaker talked about what are the advantages, the 3GPP technologies versus the non-3GPP technologies, right? Actually, we share exactly that point. So based on that, we are foreseeing the LPWA. Of course, LPWA is still coming with 3GPP standard and the non-3GPP standard, two streams. I'm going to touch base on that. But for this one, the key point is the growth. From here to, for example, year 2020, the expectation is almost all of them, or at least a majority of the new growth for the IoT domain will be from the LPWA area. So for that, currently you only have this portion of the pie, but later, in a couple of years' time, you will have this whole portion. So this is showing you the trend of the technology development. And based on this view on the technology development, where we can start for today, we put a very simplified version of what we call long-term strategy. So from wireless access point of view, we are saying it is highly recommendable when the 3GPP standard-based wireless access technology is fully standardized and mature in terms of commercial deployment, then it's highly recommendable for the telcos to start to move into that domain. However, at the same time, we also say it's still an option to keep what we call a hybrid approach. Hybrid approach means what? Hybrid approach means you can still use some of the existing technologies, for example, even Wi-Fi or let's say LoRa and the Sigfox. You can still use those technologies to complement your end-to-end IoT solution mainly to gain what? To gain time of market. So you can move into the market very fast. If that solution is already available on the commercial deployment level, so you can use them, and then eventually your master plan is like what? Your master plan is you have the 3GPP mobile seamless coverage network as a bigger umbrella. This umbrella can be as big as nationwide or even global wide. So for that, actually the LoRa and Sigfox, for example, those industry-based, standard-based technologies, they can never reach that level. That means they will never be able to compete with you in the long term. So eventually you can have this one and having them as a small umbrella under your big umbrella. And then at a later stage, when your devices, for example, is integrated with more, or when your devices and chipsets are integrated with more industry commercial use devices, then you can slowly replace them. So this is one of the approach on the wireless access. And then another segment is the application. We already mentioned, very importantly, is to partner with someone already in the vertical industry, and then can help you to move into that one to tackle many of the practical problems or challenges you are having. The third area related to the IoT is the platform. The platform, ideally, you can have one platform integrated for all the vertical industry and the vertical applications. But if that is not possible in the very beginning, then it is possible as an option. You can actually have multiple platforms, but make sure they are actually based on certain open standard. They can easily integrate it at a little bit later stage. So this screen is showing the latest development on the NB-IoT and the eMTC domain in the last 1 year. So more than 25 commercial network is actually deployed for the year 2017. 25 looks like a small number, but if you look into the background, the standard is actually only frozen at the middle and the later part of 2016. This means what? This means about 1 year after the standard is frozen, we already have more than 25 commercial network deployed. So this is the fastest speed you can see in the industry, in the history of telecom industry. And again, many more other operators is already aggressively looking into this domain. It's not commercial in the network's deployment yet. So if we try to summarize, from all the engagement we had from the global operator, the different operators, we will see actually all of the operators are actually focusing into these 4 areas, and we believe this is applicable also for other operators just starting to look into this domain. For example, here in Sri Lanka. So for the wireless access and the core network domain, very importantly, we are focusing on 3GPP standard based. As per today, we are talking about NB-IoT and the eMTC, but at a little bit later stage, we will be talking about NB2, M2, and so on and so forth. Eventually, the 3GPP standard is supposed to give you the smooth evolution approach from today until next stage, let's say even up to 5G time. And then for the platform, we already mentioned integrated platform is preferable, but somehow if you wanted to get, for example, time to market, you may be able to use separate platform, but try to integrate them at a later stage. And the applications, the ecosystem, and the partnership is the key to drive to the success of the applications. Here is talking a little bit more touching base on the core network. For some operators, if they are not ready to have a full-scale modernization of their core networks yet, then there's recommendable as an option to implement the IoT core network separate from the existing incumbent core network. So you don't need to do a full-scale upgrade of your core network. You can implement a much slimmer core network. And at a later stage, when your core network is fully modernized into, for example, SDNF3-based core network, then this too will become, for example, 2 network slice. So one slice for the phone to phone, and another slice for the IoT. So this is actually one of the possible scenarios to give you a smooth evolution approach from the core network point of view. Platform, there's already quite some platform solution available in the market. So I focus on ZTE platform solution first here. So for our ZTE platform, actually, we are fully cloud-based. Actually, this platform is fully cloud-based. It is fully integrated, incredible to different wireless access technologies, 3GPP standard and the non-3GPP standard. Actually, in some of our projects, we actually even use LoRa and so on in the wireless access. During the previous very long period, we are actually implementing IoT or M2M projects. And then to the upper side, actually, it's an open interface based on providing the toolkits like SDK and the APIs to the third-party service providers or app providers, so they can easily integrate it into the platform. And the platform is fully cloud-based and mainly focusing on these 4 areas. So the app enabling and the management, the connectivity management, and the terminal management, and also the what we call IoT ecosystem support. So this platform actually becomes the bridge to connect all the services, third-party services and applications to your network capabilities, and then making it fully integrated and working end-to-end. Okay, I think we already covered this one. Just very quickly to touch base. So traditionally, the M2M or IoT in the mobile industry was already there using the mobile technologies since GSM time. And then on the so-called commercial IoT domain, it was dominated by those short-range technologies, Wi-Fi and so on. But the new areas is actually from this area. Here, we elaborate a little bit more. For this LPWA, the new area, 2 main streams. One is a 3GPP standard. We are talking about NB-IoT and the LTE. And another 2, the dominant one, is actually the LoRa and the Sigfox. What we are foreseeing is actually, even though 3GPP standard technologies is a couple of years later than the non-3GPP standard technologies. So if you look into today's commercial deployment, the non-3GPP deployment actually is having bigger market share. But we will be seeing, after the standard is frozen and all the technology providers in the telecommunication domain is jumping into this picture, then economy of scale is going to lean into the 3GPP standard very fast. So that's why we are very confident the 3GPP standard stream is going to, if not very fast, at least step by step to replace the non-3GPP standard. And then this one actually goes to some of the parameters, sort of KPIs for these 2 3GPP standard, the NB-IoT and the eMTC. So basically, NB-IoT is more designed for low data rate, and then low speed of mobility, and the longer latency type of services. And then comparatively, the eMTC is actually can support much higher speed of data rate, and then also much higher speed of mobility. It's the same level as the the LTE network, and then the latency is also the same as the LTE network, is less than one millisecond. So this is actually some comparison, and based on this comparison, you can easily conclude the NB-IoT technology is basically more suitable for such what we call low user data rate and latency insensitive application and services. For example, for the public service segment, the smart metering for water, gas, power, or whatsoever, and also for smart home and smart security and alarming system, and also on the smart city side, for example, the smart parking, smart street light, and so on. These are actually more related to the consumers, and on the vertical industry side, the more mature applications we are having now is probably more on the, for example, the agriculture and the environment-related application scenarios. And then for the eMTC, basically compared to NB-IoT, there's two major sort of advantages. One is the eMTC actually is suitable for latency sensitive services, and another one is eMTC is coming with VoLTE capabilities. So if you need to have voice capabilities integrated into your total solution, then you should use eMTC. And for that, we are talking about, for example, application scenarios like fleet management and some industry monitoring type of applications. Okay, here is showing the ZTE is having end-to-end solutions to support the telcos to move into the IoT ecosystem. What I'm trying to highlight here is actually for ZTE, we have been working in the IoT or M2M domain for more than 10 years, far before the NB-IoT or eMTC latest standard is put into place. So we have experience and accumulated end-to-end solutions already working for commercial applications. We just update the network portion to make it to the latest technology base. And that is really what we have been doing along the way for more than 10 years. And we do have very comprehensive and in-depth experience in the IoT domain. And I think that's what I'm trying to cover in this session. Okay? So I'm not sure any questions.